Okay. All right, so today we're starting hopefully what will be a series to learn Tanya, Mitzvah Shem. I want to try to go quickly, like a parak a week, and we're going to start today with the Hakdomas. And one of the things that I thought to myself, that every week I should bring a different Tanya. Like a different type, a different version, or a different book that explains Tanya. And so this week I brought this one, the Tanya Mavor. It looks backwards on camera. And the Tanya Mavor, it's quite simple. Actually, the person who compiled it is Georgian. Like the Chaim family, they know him, Alashvili. And what he did was, he didn't want to change the Tzuras Hadaf, and he put in the Mara Mekoimis. Every time there's a pasuk and the Ma'amer Chazal, he shows you where it is, which is very, very helpful, because the Alter Rebbe and Tanya doesn't put in anywhere. I mean, basically not. They tell a story that one of the Talmidei Amagid, he learned Tanya, and he said to the Alter Rebbe that one of the things that he wrote in Tanya, I remember me and you, we heard it together from the Magid. So why don't you give him credit? You should have said. So he said, I did give him credit. He says, in Tanya, Perek Chavov starts with the word Beram. Okay. He says, Beram is Rosh Tevis and Ber Magid.
We don't have Shofs in Parsha.
Right.
And I heard Noach Elimelech, Parsha Shofs are very similar to the Perek Aleph in Tanya.
Ah, really? Yeah? Okay.
So,
the Shoftim.
Shoftim, yeah.
Very nice. Okay. So, yeah. So, and then he brings small biurim, very small, on the bottom. Many from the Rebbe, just really translation of Aramaic, sometimes unusual words. Unusual words, and so I figured I'll bring this Tanya this week, just to use this Tanya. Okay, we're starting the Sharblat. We know the Sharblat. The Alter Rebbe says it's Sefer Shal Beinanim, and to explain the pasuk Hikarev Eilecha B'derech Arucha Uktzara. I'm not going to go into that because whatever that we're all familiar with here. If you want a Tanya, so I want to start with the Hakdomas hamelaket. Okay. So, and to try to to share just a perspective a little bit. So, many people present the Hakdomas hamelaket, the introduction, as the Alter Rebbe is excusing himself. People have a taina, and the Alter Rebbe is justifying, like we say in Hebrew, mitnatzel. He's excusing why he wrote a book. I love, Rabbi Shneir Ashkenazi is like Go'inish Kop, a genius. He says, can you, there are so many self-help books. Do you need a therapist, or you could just read it in a book? The Tanya, the Taina of the Hasidim, what are you telling me? You're putting it in a sefer? We want to talk to you. We need, that's what it's all about. You can't
justifying is mitzadek.
Mitzadek, yeah, and mitnatzel
is excusing.
Excusing. Yeah, right. It's not a just. Okay, good. To me, it's different, but we'll read a little bit inside. So he says, Hakdomas hamelaket, and this is an igeres. It's a letter that the Alter Rebbe wrote to the Kolos Anshish Lomenu, and there are different Rosh Tevis. The Rebbe says the reason why the Alter Rebbe wrote a Rosh Tevis is that you can read it a few ways. Yishmereim, Tzureim, V'yevorchem, whatever, different. It's a bracha. The Alter Rebbe is benching, that on that page. And he starts off, Aleichem Ishim Ekra, I'm calling to you, Ishim, men. So I'll say two things that Hasidim used to say about this phrase. One is that when it says Vayikra al Moshe was Chavivus, Hashem, the Alter Rebbe is calling us, it's like an asinas koyach. It's not just, it's Ekra, I'm calling you, come, a lashon of chibah. Aleichem Mishim Ekra. The other idea Hasidim used to say is, it says about Moshe Rabbeinu, Ishu Elikim, half from the waist up he's godly, from the waist down he's, the Alter Rebbe is coming to help us with the waist down, with the struggles. And he says, Shimu Elai, Reit Tzedek, Mavakshi Hashem, listen to me. The Alter Rebbe, the Rambam also starts the Meir Nevuchim in this style. Listen, those of you who are seeking truth, who are seeking Hashem, V'yishma Aleichem Alekim, the Eibishter will listen to you. L'migadol v'ad katan, every person in their position, doesn't make a difference. Kol anash dinesenu smuchas shelo, all the people in the neighborhood, in Russia, in the area. Ish al mekoyim yavi l'shalom. The Alter Rebbe is giving a bracha through learning Tanya, that everyone will find his place in Avodas Hashem, not to be lost. And then v'chayim ad ha'olam. Then the life is in this world, and netzach sel avoid for eternity. When a person is in the right space, with peace and Amen Ken Yirah. So that's the introduction. So I just want to say like a general point about this. The Alter Rebbe, he spends a lot of time explaining the taina of the people. The answer is not, is less. You know, it's like, also, if you read it, the taina of the people, the complaint of the people, I'm speaking like I'm assuming that you are familiar with what the Alter Rebbe speaks about. The taina of the people is very tight. They're not leaving the Alter Rebbe room. There's no wiggle room. It's very hard to open that one, the binding. They're not living in wiggle room. It's very tight. They're giving firm arguments. The Alter Rebbe's answer, it already requires a little suspension of logic. You know what I mean? Like, they're asking a question that in Seichel, and the Alter Rebbe is answering, you need a little emunah. For the answer, you need it's like it's not, it doesn't align. So, to me, I take it a little bit, I see it a little bit differently. And I, just also a little bit in the language of the Alter Rebbe. With excuses, when people give excuses, they try to be very convincing. But the Alter Rebbe is saying, if you would be honest with yourself, you don't have to be so... the reason why you're giving so many excuses is because really you're wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So when a person is wrong, he justifies. If you're right, you don't have to say much. So let's see a little bit how he... Hine medazos, it's known. Ki margele b'pubed insha b'kol anash. To me, the Alter Rebbe uses the word margele regilus. It lowers it a little bit. They're not thinking about it too much. Everyone's just repeating this theme. What are they saying? How could you compare speaking to a Rebbe? Shmiyas divrei musar to reading in a book. What's the problem? The person who's reading is a blunget. You know, he's lost.
He might not get it.
Alter Rebbe uses a lashon haposuk wherever he is, the way he views the world. We have a cloud, right? The Gemara says a prisoner can't free himself. How could a person who you can't, the Alter Rebbe writes later, how could you elevate if you yourself are down? How are you gonna, you have a problem, but your whole view of the world is distorted. How you're gonna read a sefer, how's that gonna work? A person is confused. You're lost. Being lost. Right? There's so many ways. There's so many phrases. The Frierdiker Rebbe describes a person who he says Kriya Shema Shalamita, he cries, and then he says this expression that he forgives himself. Not that the Eibush, he feels better. Eret zich meichel gewet. There's such a, I worked it out. There's so many ways that a person could be, I remember reading a letter that the Rebbe wrote to Reb Shlomo Chaim Kesselman, that he had young Bachurim, 13, 14 years old, that were davening ba'avodah. They're davening hours, and he says, the Rebbe writes, they're young. He says, Afroichim shalei niftachu einayim. They're little, they never learned Chassidus. What are you doing? Giving them, misleading them to have this imagine. Like in the beginning, milah b'milah, you have to have a foundation, not. So there's many ways, in Derech Chaim, the Mittler Rebbe writes, you have people that they fast for their sins. They're fasting, but they're still on the path of sin. Evilim, they're blind to see derech pishon, that they're on the path of sin. But they're fasting for their sins.
Right.
They say a story that the Rebbe Rashab, when the Bachurim in Temchet Mimim, it was classic that when Bachurim would come in to ask for a tikkun, he would tell them to stay up Thursday night to learn Chassidus the whole night. It was a classic thing. I remember I was by a Fabrein and Zalman Garari said the Rebbe Rashab told. Maybe it was the Frierdiker Rebbe. I'm not sure. He was in Lubavitch. Anyway, one Bacher went into Yechidus. He poured out his heart to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe didn't tell him to stay up Thursday night. He told him, but he came out. He was uncomfortable. In other words, it's the cool thing. Everybody that went to Yechidus, So he started staying up Thursday night. A few weeks went by. He started to have problems with his eyes. Went to an eye doctor. The doctor said to him, what are you doing? What changed? This and that, whatever it was. And he said, you have something with your eyes that at night, if you're using your eyes at night, you're hurting it. And so that's what triggered. I don't know if it was reversible. I don't. In other words, the damage was a very serious thing. And so then he came back, and so then Groenem went to him, and everyone knew the story that something happened to his eyes. He said, I was just curious. I wanted to know, the Rebbe told you to stay up? Right? The Rebbe, so he said, no. He says, the Rebbe, you have to know. But so it's a hard thing, right? It's to be lost in Avodas Hashem. We don't need examples. It's without an end. And he says, so the koishi, it's very difficult that the yochel liris is a erki tev adonos b'svarim. Yes, there's good light in the svarim, but it's in a sefer. Af ki mosik o erlei naim o marpel nefesh. Even though really it's mosik, it's sweet. And it's a marpel nefesh, it's a cure for the soul. In other words, even though when the person is learning, he has a positive experience. A person is learning Torah, he's learning an Indian Avodah, he's learning a minor, he says, oh, it's so gishmak, I feel like it's talking to me, but it's not like being in Yechidus and listening to the Rebbe.
Right.
It's not the same. Then he says, Bar Mindain, in addition. Bechlal, there's a problem. So there's a problem with the reader, the one who's learning. There's a problem. Then there's also a problem mitzad the sefer. He says sifrei hayir habenuyim al pisechel anushi. Those svarim, like about ethics, about morality, that are logic, that are based on logic. Bevadai einan shavin l'chol nefesh. It's impossible that every book should talk to everyone. It's impossible. Kein kol sichon v'adei shavos. Ve'in seichel adam zeh mispoil u'miseirer. V'mashem mispoil u'miseirer seichel chaveireh. Everyone is moved by something else. K'meisha Amru Razal, the Gemara says in Brachos about the bracha of Chacham HaRozim al Shishim Ribim Yisrael. So it says, why do you make such a bracha, Chacham HaRozim, about the Eibishter, that he knows all the mysteries? Because when you see 600,000 people, it's so many different ways of thinking. Now, the Gemara brings this halacha to make this bracha. But then the Rif, the halacha, he leaves out. It says in the Gemara that when you see a big chacham, and it says an example, like this one, like that one, you make a bracha Chacham HaRozim. The Rif is a halacha sefer, he leaves it out. Why does he leave it out? Because realistically, la halacha, you're never going to meet such a person. You're never going to meet, right? But the Ramban, in his Pirush on the Rif, he brings it. And he speaks about it. The Rif left it out, but I want to talk about this bracha. Ramban zal, over there in Brachos, but Pirush HaSifri, Rabbi Yeshua. He says that the Sifri explains by Yeshua that Moshe Rabbeinu says to Hashem, leave me, when I pass away, don't leave the people like sheep without a shepherd. So the Eibusha says, Yeshua, Ish Asher Ruach Bai, he has a spirit in him. What does it mean? So it says, that he could meet the spirit of every person. He's able to connect with every person. So, it's not. So that's if you're writing a sefer that's based on reason, you're convincing people to make the right choices in life. Not everyone. You can't appeal to everyone in one book. But it's afilu b'sifrei hayid. Asher yisedeisam b'harei kedush midrashi chazal. Even those svarim that are Torah svarim. Asher ruach Hashem diber b'am. He brings a lashon apasuk. It's a spirit of Hashem. When we lost it, Alashenu. It's mamash hashtik eibishter. Not only that, the kol shishim ribu neshamas klolis Yisrael. All the Yidden bechlolos and prateim prateim ad nitzutz kalsha b'kalim. Even the kalsha b'kalim, this little spark of neshama u'kusei ha'erach she'ba'ameinu b'nei Yisrael. Any Yid has a connection to Torah. Kulhu miskashrim be'eraisa. And ve'eraisa here, Makasher says in HaKadosh Baruch Hu Gneidu b'zeira HaKadosh. He says it's still a problem because it's harei zeh derech klolos l'cholos Yisrael in a general way. It's not, in other words, every Yid is part of a general neshama. And in a general way, you're connected. But for you personally, there are 600,000 different. For you personally to find your exact spot, it's not so partial, he's going to say. It's after nitna teira li dorish. Even though the Torah is, every detail is there. Not everyone is zeich to find it. And to understand at such a level of detail. And now the Alter Rebbe brings the final part of the argument. Even in Nigla the Torah and Halacha, but what do we find? Machlekes. The whole Yiddishkeit is about machlekes. Tanoim v'amaroim minakotza lakotza mamish. These say chayiv, these say potel. So there's disagreement. There's a complete opposite perspective in Nigla. Ve'elu divi elikim chayim. The lashon in the pasuk is elikim, lashon rabim. Why? Because every neshama has its own root. And tiferes. So every neshama is a shoshim vidas chesed. Hanagosan gamkein, their behavior, their conduct is lahatis. They have a leaning klapi chesed lahakol chulu. And obviously the people who are more from gvura, they lean to gvura. How much more so when it comes to chassidus, to avaviyira, to matters of the heart, to spirituality. Ava and Yirid, B'meicha, V'liba, the Kol Chad V'chad from Shirad Yilei, everyone in their way. Literally, every person is different. L'fum Mad Mishar B'libi, how he envisions it, how he imagines, how he reflects. He spoke about this. Why does it, in Baila, there's one Eibishter, why I say Sha'arim Lashon Rabim? Hashem is known in the gates, because every person has a different gate. Every person has a different portal to the Eibishter. So here what happens is, just to go back just a little bit to discuss what's going on, that this is very early, Tavkuf Nun Zayin, very early in the Alter Rebbe's Nesius. I should also say that this time of the year is connected to Tanya, because it was the Hakdomas on the Tanya. The Alter Rebbe sent the Tanya to be reviewed, Parshas Tovei, in Elul of Tov Kuf Pei Zayin.
We'll say that again.
The Alter Rebbe sent the Tanya as a manuscript to be reviewed by three people: the Braditchever, and Rabbi Zusha Me'anapoli, and Rabbi Huda Leba Cohen. So they wrote their Hakdomas. They wrote in Elul, Parshas Tovei, Chai Elul, the week of Chai Elul.
And that's the story about them being so excited about it that they couldn't sleep. And
They meet each other. They meet each other.
Right. So that's the time of the year when the Tanya. So this is a good time to start around in Elul.
oh yeah,
And just to understand that the early years of the Alter Rebbe's Chassidus, everything was about individual people coming to the Alter Rebbe to ask him for guidance and Avodas Hashem. And now, after about 17 years, of really working with people privately and by coaching people to serve Hashem, Alter Rebbe suddenly is putting it in a sefer.
he was a life coach.
He's putting it in a sefer, and the people are obviously devastated. And
It's like supplement. I mean, not this or this. In
But
addition to...
he's saying basically the way the Alter Rebbe is going to present it, there's no Yechidus. There's Tanya.
Because it was hard to get also to stay, to visit Alter Rebbe. It was discipline over there.
Yeah, but in other words, he's going to bring a few reasons, right? He's going to bring a few reasons why he wrote Tanya. But the Tanya, just to understand the Tanya of the people, first of all, when you meet the Rebbe, every person, it's tailored. It's tailored. Every person gets an individual, obviously there's also the ruchnius part that the Alter Rebbe is not addressing here. That when a person goes to a Rebbe, they say that the Rebbe is mashlim. The Rebbe gives you what you're missing. Like he fills in. There's something that the Rebbe is filling in. And how is that going to happen? Through a sefer that's written for everybody. So and obviously there's disappointment. Let's also remember that some people went to the Alter Rebbe for parnasa things. Not everyone went for just for spiritual things. So what's going to happen with that? We need an excuse to get in the door. And then we could ask about parnasa also.
But we have letter about Parnas also.
Yeah.
Don't come.
And then also really something to think about is the time that we're in now. That we don't have the opportunity to go into Yechidus. And we have, like the Rebbe Rashab said before he passed away, Ich gehe in Himmel, und the Ksavim lazich eich. We have the Ksavim, we have the guidance. And so that's part of the debate of what's going on. Is it possible? What can a sefer do? How could a sefer help? And I know it's a little cheesy because this is my business, but I just want to give this as an example. Sometimes parents come and they say, "I need my kid in this class." And they give you reasons. You bet they're like the most powerful lawyers. There's not you can't sich nicht herausdrehen, you can't get out. And really the Chassidim, the Alter Rebbe, they cornered him. You can't there's no. What are you going to say? That's it. But I think there's something very, very profound, and I'm saying this gently with, like with reflection. That, Tanya means to be a Beinoni. Right? Tanya, Sefer Shel Beinonim, everyone should be a Beinoni. I'm sorry that I bring this in a Shir Tanya, but Jung once said that one of the worst problems one of the biggest problems that we have in the world is that we don't realize how evil people really are. Mm-hmm. We're not taking it seriously. We're treating it like, in other words, what does it mean? At the end of the day, to take what does it mean to be a Beinoni? To be a Beinoni means to take full responsibility. That's really what it means. Right? Not to think in some part of my life, I'm going to leave my house and my wife is going to pick up my laundry and make my bed and take care of, whatever it is. Someone else is going to take, when I walk down the street, I litter and I did, whatever. And in a certain way, I litter in my own life. I make bad choices and whatever. And I think, don't worry. The Beinoni is to be like acutely aware that every choice, that all the bad things, this is not a discussion about why bad things happen in the world, but when you learn shchita ever a little bit, yeah. So when you look at a knife, it tells you everything about the shochet. You could see how disciplined he is, how steady his hand is, how if he's just being sloppy, and then the knife has a belly or a curve, and the sides are not even, the angles, it's all there, it's all visible. Who are we? Who are we? Our physical body, our relationships, everything is a collective of our decisions.
You could also see by who's taught by
who. Who taught
it. So, not necessarily the person.
Good.
But over here, it looks like he's telling us, that he's empowering us, each one to have their own
right.
path.
That's really the word. Empowering is like very important word, right? It's not a blame question. Alter Rebbe is really, and to me, that's why the Alter Rebbe is, in the answer, he's suspending a little bit the logic. He's like, if you're going to get into, would you want to argue? I'm not going to win you. You know what I mean? You'll give me better arguments, whatever, you're right. But if you want to, improve your life, here, this is the way to do it, take it or leave it. And in a little bit, it's also the discussion about the two Arucha and the Derech Tzara. What's the Derech Tzara? The Derech Tzara is that all of us, what's right, we know in our gut. You know what I mean? People know what's right. It's like if someone says, I'm sorry, I'm giving such a strange example, right? They say, how do you know marriage is good? Maybe it's not good. They say, because people who are married have a longer life expectancy by this and this number.
You just know it's right.
So they say, yeah, but that doesn't prove anything. In other words, it's not a logical argument. I don't know, it isn't, whatever. But in other words, everyone knows what's right and what's wrong. A 2-year-old kid says it's not fair. In other words, Hashem wired us with an understanding of what's right and what's wrong. And what the Alter Rebbe is saying is, Derech Tzara, you know what's right, do it. It's not so powerful because once in a while we fall and we don't have the safety net when we do that. Because everyone knows what's right, but we still do things wrong. What's the Derech Harucha? The Derech Harucha is to think through every consequence and to study and to, right? And to value every right decision. And my uncle says, when people quote statistics, we're sitting around. He says, quoting statistics is like a drunk hanging on a lamppost. In other words, people throw at you a number of, but really you don't know how it was. They're just using it to try to justify their crooked agenda. Right, their agenda. It's not, right? In every once in a while, a person who in most of their life, they don't think things through. Then they have once in a while, they have like one spot that they thought through, like, like a tiny little piece. They're like, oh, when a Baal Seichel. Why is it a derech harucha? Because to Avos Hashem based on reason, you have to think through everything. It has to be from the beginning till the end. And that's why it's such a process. That's why Chassidus says that the Yizbeinus Amavile de Ava. Why is it difficult if it's not Ava Mesuteres? If you have to generate Lahoilid, because you have to really, you can't leave things.
You could only love something if you really know it.
Right, you have to think it through.
That's how it creates love.
Right, and the toiv that it's for you, and the toiv in it, and every part. So, till here, the Alter Rebbe really presented the tiness of Anash. Let's take a look. Ach, says the Alter Rebbe, this is the answer. However, the yoidai umakide klamin. I'm writing Tanya to people who we know each other. I know them, they know me. These are people who I'm familiar with, I recognize. Meaning, it's not a sefer that you buy off the shelf and you don't know who. This is being addressed to you. We know each other, we have a relationship. Hein kol echad ve'echad me'anash shebemedinesenu usmuches shelo, to the people in our neighborhood, in Russia, etc. Asher hoya hadibur shel chiba matzu beinenu. We spoke in Yechidus. You opened up your heart. We have this loving relationship. The gilu l'chanai. They revealed to me kol ta'alumis libam u'meicham ta'avedas Hashem atluyu b'lev. There's another element here. Thank you. What the Alter Rebbe is saying is, you have authors that write a sefer on the way they view the world, their perspective. I have a style. Here's a path. Let me share with you, right? They develop an idea. The Alter Rebbe says, Tanya is not an idea that I developed. I'm not trying to share with you my Torahs. You came to me. You asked me questions. I experienced. So I'm here to answer your questions. I'm not here to share my Torahs. And that's a completely different perspective. So Aleihem Titiv Milasi, it's to them that I'm speaking. Ulashoni Eit Sefer, again, the Alter Rebbe is using these psukim, which is very often in the Igris that Alter Rebbe uses psukim. The Kontresim Elu, that's what they were called at that time, and Ekroim B'Shem Lukuti Amorim. It's to those people. Milukotim, Mipisforim, Mipisefrim, and they have the advantage of being on Chazal, Kadeshe Elyin Ishmasam Eden, for Samim Etzleinu, the known people. The Chassidim would say that we're talking about the Shalach Kodesh, the Rambam, the Maharal, and then the Baal Shem Tov and the Magid. Some of the ideas are nirmozim lechakimin beigres hakodesh merabisenu sheberetz hakodesh. That Mendel of Vitebsker and some of the others who went with him to Eretz Yisrael, the Alter Rebbe writes like they're my teachers, even though the Alter Rebbe was a chaver, really. But he writes, some of them I heard, some are from the letters that they wrote, some I heard from them directly. The Kulam, Hein Shuvis al Shailas Rabbis, it's answers, it's not my theories. And it's the Shailas Asher She'elim Be'itz Akol Nashvim Dinas Inu Tomid. Again and again, This is what people are asking. Kol echad lefi erkei. Loshis, eitzes, benafshon, ba'avidus Hashem. Why am I writing this sefer? I'm not writing this sefer because it's better, and I don't. You know what I mean? In other words, yeah, there's an argument to see each other. But Lias Kenas Man Grama Eid, I don't have the time. What was going on? People were coming to the Alter Rebbe, and they were waiting weeks, not being that, going back to their families, going back to work, because they have to go into Yechidus. And the Alter Rebbe himself didn't have time. So there's no time to answer everyone al sheilosei b'pratos. V'gam hashikcha metzuya, people forget. Well, imagine a person comes back, the Alter Rebbe answered them. I just mentioned also one of the things that I heard about this was that about this Hakdomas, that Chassidim would not write down the Yechidus. And Bechlal, they wouldn't write down the Torah. So many Chassidim, they had like an aversion, dafka not to write down, because if you write it, you freeze it. Like, this is the way I understand it today. Maybe if you reflect and you carry it with you in your Avedis Hashem, maybe it's gonna become refined.
Do you talk about generational Alter Rebbe or?
Yeah, generational Alter Rebbe. That when they would come out of Yechidus, they themselves would refuse to write it down because they the way I understood it today. Maybe I'm going to sit down, I'm going to think about what the Rebbe said, and then tomorrow.
What if they
I'm gonna
forget?
do it again.
I guess they didn't forget.
No, well, obviously the Alter Rebbe is saying they did forget.
Yeah.
But it came. There was something behind it that
there was some
they
kind of
had some
seichel
concept
behind it,
of not writing it down. They felt that
it wasn't because they were lazy. Let's just put it that
No,
way.
maybe they will modify which is to their agenda, to their interest. I mean, like reflection.
right. Just to try to be open to understanding it a different way. Al Kain, therefore, Rishamti, I wrote down Kol Hatshuvas, Al Kol Hashailas, L'Mishmeres Lois Rabbi, Lias L'Kol Echad Ve'echad V'Zikarin Bein Einov. V'Lo Yidchayk Oid. You won't have to push yourself and go through these difficulties. Likones L'Davar Imi B'Yechidis. Ki Bahen, in these kuntresim, Yimtza, he will find calm. Yimtza Mergel L'Nafshe, Ve'etza Nechena, V'chol Davar Akasha Allah V'Averes Hashem. And of course, V'nochin Yelibe B'Toach B'Hashem V'Emer B'Adenu. That he should have, of course, he should, to have B'Tachem, Mir Hashem. And this is also a Lashon Apostle. Let me just see this second. Yeah. It brings from the Lashon and Tillim. Yeah. Now the Alter Rebbe says, how about, in other words, let's go back to this point. The idea of having a mashpia is in other disciplines too. In other words, we understand that just reading a book is not so effective. You need,
Someone to monitor, coach.
You need a trainer. You need someone to talk to. I'm sorry. Just one other thing. I heard from Mendel Wechter. He says that Tanya is the Teresh B'Ksav of Chassidus. Teresh B'Ksav, we say Anon Nafshi Ksav V'Sihavis, that the Eibusher put himself in the Torah. The Alter Rebbe is saying, I put myself in the Tanya. What does that mean? Usually, when someone writes a book, the people who read the book are on their own. The Alter Rebbe is saying, I'm going to be there. When you're going to read Tanya, I'm still involved, I'm still connected. I still have to find a way to help you. And people tell stories about, like mitzad that Indian that Alter Rebbe is still connected. All kinds of Peladic stories. Reb Nissim Mangel has a unbelievable story about a bacher who came to Hakofis. I don't remember the details now. The Rebbe told him to learn Tanya with the person, like 3 times each perek, to learn a few prakim Tanya. Simchas Torah night after Hakofas, like 3 o'clock in the morning, the guy wanted a bracha for a shidduch. It was mamish a peladik maisa, and he learned. You ever heard the story from him? He learned with the guy after Hakofas by the Rebbe 3 o'clock in the morning. He sat down to learn the prokim that the Rebbe said like 3 times, and then in the morning, and then mamish, and then that week he had a maisa pela. And there are many, many stories of Yeshua from Tanya, from learning Tanya.
Not only Yeshua. There was a guy once, I forgot who it was, but he learned in Kfar Chabad in the early years from all the Sfardim that they used to come. So he learned, I forgot who taught him Tanya. So once, how do we know this? Once there was a guy that didn't have time, and he told him, I hate Lubavitch. This guy passed by and said, I hate Lubavitch. He said, why? I hate Lubavitch. He says, why? He said, because since I learned Tanya, I can't enjoy anything. No tightness.
It gets in the way. It gets
So
in the
not
way.
only Yeshua's, the Rabbi didn't leave him alone.
The Tushia, right? Li Eitza, the Tushia, to weaken the Eitzahara, the Gemara says. So, yeah, the many. So that's another aspect of the Alter Rebbe with Tanya. Now, this next section is already not part of the answer. Right? So, what's the Alter Rebbe saying? The challenge of the answer to us is, yeah, Yedei Makira. So you're telling me, Alter Rebbe saw whoever's going to learn Tanya, but we have to suspend our logic. We have to have emunah for that. Right? It's not a rational answer. I didn't speak to the Alter Rebbe about my problems. A person is learning Tanya, and
he's not getting it.
It's not helping him. We should discuss it. He's not telling the mashpiyim that they should give them their own advice. He's telling them to help them learn Tanya. Yeah. I'm asking them, don't cover your mouth. To behave as if you're humble. Shiflus shel sheker chas v'shalom. Shiflus shel sheker means you have the merchandise, you have what to say, and you lie about it. You're like, I don't know. What do you mean? If you have an achrayus. Terrible punishment. It says in Gemara that a person that has the merchandise and doesn't help someone, even the babies in their mother's womb curse them. Like the Psazal Lashon in the Gemara. The Geidel Aschara, on the other hand, the great reward when you help someone. Mimaimer Azal al Pasuk Meir Eni Shneim Hashem Ki Yoir Hashem Ponav Aleim Erpnei Melech Chayim. That the Eibishter will show them His face. Pnimius. Mechayeh Chayim. It's a reference to a particular madrege. Yizakenu v'chayenu v'yomim. The Eibishter we should be zeicher. The days that we won't have to teach one another. Kulam Yedis v'gemer. Kimor is Deis Hashem v'gemer. Amen. Kein Yirasim. Mitzvah Hashem. So that for the time of Mashiach, and we'll all know the Eibishter. The Hine. Let's look at the last the last paragraph. The Hine. Achashen ispashko akontresim anal. When the kontresim went out, b'kerev kol anash anal. Ba'atokas rabbis, there were many copies. People writing them over. There were people who were making changes on purpose. They were being mesalef. They were, famous story that Rabbi Yaman Kletzker was a businessman, and he went to a Yerid, and he saw people selling Tanyas. This is before Tafkuf Nun Zayin. And he was so excited, he bought one, and he sees they have a lot, and he starts reading, and he sees that there's things,
Fake.
stuff. Yeah, Mamish. I think in the Rebbe's library they have some copies of the forgeries. They don't share it because they don't. I once saw it on display. They don't want people to whatever. Anyway,
They don't want people to study it.
to see what the anyway. But I remember once on So also when the Alter Rebbe said he'll print Tanya on the condition that they don't write who the Mechaber is. So that's why in the Hakdoma it's all with it's hinting and so on. So Hine Hayidei Ribui Hatokes Shein, so many copies. Rabu Kamei Rabu Atol Sefer made tremendous amount of mistakes. So therefore, Olazois Nod Barucham Shalanosim Efrosim Hanakuvin, these great people that are we mentioned their names. And Eskarim Leil Me'eva Ladaf on the other page, Litroyach Begufam, they toiled hard to clean out all the mistakes. Mamish Beguf, and Ma'oid, they spent a lot of money. Lahavias HaKodres, Manal Beis HaFus, Nenukim, Mikol Sig, Litol Sefer, with, pure line, Mamish line proof, they proofed every line, and Magoyim Hate, they're very well reviewed. Amina, the Alter Rebbe says, and I say with Paul Tava, Yasher Chelo, thank you, Yasher Koyach, and I want to protect them, that no one should take away their business. There's a pasuk, Order Masik V'Oreyehu, V'Order Bei Klolo, Bei Nidui Chas V'Shalom V'Chol. So, okay, therefore, Yehuda V'Ed L'Kra, there's a pasuk that forbids it, but I'm also going to say it like there's a Lashon HaGemara. So Koasina, I come along Lemish the good Rabbi to put a chayrim, a big chayrim, Al Kol Matfisim on all the printers. They had like China issues then. They cheap, the knockoff product. Shalayla Hatpis HaKodesim Na'aleh, they Afman, they get it line. Not themselves, not through Shluchim, built the Rishus HaNakuvim Anal without their permission of the publishers. Neshechom Yishonim in place of Fus. U'Lashenim Yunam, it'll be sweet. Also, by the way, they printed, I think, 5,000 of the first version of Tanya, and they ran out very quickly. They printed already, before the 5 years were up, they already printed more editions. I say this when we talk about this. Ari Chitrik, all of Shalom, told me that when he remembers when he came to New York in the 1940s, I don't know exactly the years, the 1940s, he says, there were shulls that had the first edition of Tanya just sitting on the shelf in the shul. It was just right there. 150-year-old Sefer, it was just sitting on the... Yeah, he says, and then Betamol today, it's worth over $100,000, whatever it is. Anyway, that's one thing. Also, the Bechlal, this idea of not writing down and all of that, so Bechlal, to print Chassidus, it wasn't the custom. It wasn't the way. The Alter Rebbe had the job, like going against Bechlal. They didn't print. The Chassidim didn't print. The Magi didn't print. The Baal Shem Tov didn't print his Teiris. So why here is the Alter Rebbe?
No, they did by Parshas. Keter Shem Tov Parshas.
But all of that happened. The Talmidim did it later. It's not
Yaakov Yosef from Poland.
So Yaakov Yosef told us. Yaakov Yosef was the first that printed Chassidus.
But it's Parshiyot. It's not like philosophy. Like it's
right.
Because what is Strelitsky? He complains that it's like we can't do this book. It's too much chokhmah here.
There's too much chokhmah.
He says it's possible bus coins.
No. Okay.